The federal judge presiding in Donald Trump's classified documents case has cancelled the trial's start date, which was scheduled to begin on the 20th of May. The case has now been postponed indefinitely. The order had been expected due to unresolved issues in the case, and because the former president is currently on trial in a separate hush money payments case in New York. Now, yesterday, we heard the highly anticipated testimony of former porn star Stormy Daniels in that hush money payments case in Manhattan. Daniels provided salacious details on how she met Trump, slept with him, and how she was paid to keep quiet on the encounter on the eve of the election in 2016. We can now bring in Larry Sabato, director of UVA's Center for Politics, who joins us from Charlottesville. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24. There are less than 6 months to go until the elections in the United States. Donald Trump doesn't have a lot of time to do a lot of campaigning because he's spending so much time inside a courtroom. Is this helping him or hurting him, considering all the coverage this case has been getting?
Amazingly, the polls have not moved even 1 percentage point. He hasn't gained support. He hasn't lost support. It's because his base is locked in. And also, I think people who oppose Trump oppose him for lots of reasons. This is just one additional reason. And let's remember, people think they know the gist of this. They actually don't know a lot of the pieces of this, but they remember this from 2016. And they think it's an old issue. It doesn't really matter anymore. So Trump is quite lucky there. I would think in another era, if this had been 10 or 20 years ago, he wouldn't even be the party nominee at this point.
Donald Trump says all these cases against him are essentially a witch hunt. These are words he uses often. How do you reason with that line of thinking? Because a lot of his base think this, as well as some Republicans.
Yes, well, they think this because he says it. This is a cross between a party, a person, Donald Trump, and a cult. And so when you have those elements together, and when you have someone who, frankly, can be as vindictive as Donald Trump can be, you hesitate to challenge him. So, in essence, whatever Donald Trump says goes. Facts don't matter as much as they used to, and it hurts me to say that.
How do you explain the fact that the needle hasn't moved, given that, the public has been informed of what is happening? Is there just this
Well,
unwillingness to accept reality, or have people already made up their mind 6 months out?
that's a lot of it. You put your finger on it. It's the fact that people already know, for the most part, how they're going to vote. This probably will be a very close election. You never know what will happen in 6 months, but right now it's certainly very close because we have a system so polarized that out of our 50 states plus the District of Columbia, only about 7 states matter. The rest of the states, we can color them in tonight if you want to, but that's part of it. So people have decided already. And second, they do think they know what happened, even though they've missed the critical part of this, which is that the hush money was paid in order to keep the facts from the American people before the 2016 election, which was also an extremely close election. Hillary Clinton might well have won that race, could have won it easily, actually, had this information been out before Election Day.
I want to ask you about the role of the media because, of course, when Donald Trump secured the election in 2016, the media sort of questioned itself because Donald Trump has the ability of grabbing and getting the media's attention. And now, if you see the coverage with how this case has been, the hush money case over in New York, you have reporters following him from outside Trump Tower to him entering the courthouse. Everything is detailed ad nauseum. Have the U.S. media learned anything at all?
Well, they say they have. Here's what they learned. Back in 2016, they would keep focused on an empty podium where Donald Trump would speak in an hour or two for all of that time while they talked about Donald Trump. They don't do that anymore, but what they do is just as damaging if you care about the issues in democracy. He comes and goes. Every time he comes in the courtroom or he leaves the courtroom, he has a statement which is carried for the most part live or sometimes tape delayed. So he still gets his message out. He communicates mainly with his base with this nonsense that Joe Biden has coordinated all of these cases. Absolutely untrue. A president in this country doesn't have the ability to do that. Any president cannot do that. But it sells. It sells. And so another thing I'd mention, because Stormy Daniels, the porn star, is back on the witness stand today. There's way too much emphasis on her. She is a part of the case, but it's not the critical part of the case. But you know much better than I do because you're in media that when you have a porn star, the porn star is going to get the attention.
Exactly. It's salacious and people want to listen. I want to ask you about women while I have you here, because Donald women continue to support Donald Trump even though his presidency essentially helped topple Roe versus Wade. How do you explain this?
Because, again, abortion is one of many issues that people are considering. Now, it's going to help Democrats a lot. It's going to help Joe Biden a lot. But it will only help in very close swing states because it shifts maybe 2 or 3 points. Now, women do disproportionately support Biden. It's men, white men in particular, who are supporting Donald Trump heavily, and particularly those without a college education, white men, non-college. That's the core of Donald Trump's support. So let's remember, while millions of women support Donald Trump, millions more support Biden. But that's not enough. You have to do better with white men.
Can we talk about the support that Donald Trump is getting from the African American community? Because the other day I read an article about small business owners in Atlanta who think that even though things are going so well with the US economy compared to the rest of the world, inflation is now lower, jobs are being created, the money is being poured into infrastructure. It seems that people think that Donald Trump would do better.
Yes, there actually are black citizens and brown citizens, Hispanic voters who believe that Donald Trump is better for the economy and therefore better for their businesses and their families. Now, what people tell pollsters in May and what they do when the voting actually takes place in October and early November often are two different things. And I said voters are locked in, but you've got several percent, and they include several percent, for example, of black voters who are saying they will consider Donald Trump or they're leaning to Donald Trump, but I'd be willing to bet a sizable sum. When it comes to voting, they'll move back to the Democrats. That's not true in every category. We're looking at young voters in particular. They're not going to vote for Donald Trump, but they're turned
But I
off.
want to ask you about young voters because we are seeing what's happening on college campuses across the United States. Frustrations are growing over Joe Biden's support for Israel. Now, maybe potentially there could be some conditions on that support. How vital is the youth vote, and can it really swing this election?
Well, Joe Biden won young people, depending on how you define young, by at least 20 percentage points, and more than that if you make it a smaller group, 18 to 24. If he does not carry young people handily, it's over. He's simply not going to win. And that's understanding that young people vote at a lower rate, sometimes a much lower rate than older voters, but they're critical voters. So is the current situation and all the demonstrations on college campuses, is that hurting Biden? Yes, it's hurting him even with older voters because of the law and order issue. But it's hurting with younger voters who say, I'm very disappointed in Joe Biden. He's not representing my views on the Middle East. I'm going to not vote for Trump, but not vote at all, or vote for a third party or independent candidate like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, some of them won't follow through, but some of them will. And every vote is going to count given the closeness of this election.
Larry Sabato, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.